probably thought about it at least once, maybe in front of the mirror, maybe in a moment of self-doubt, maybe during a casual comment from someone that lingered longer than it should have. What does the size of my testicles actually mean? You wouldn't be the first to wonder, and you certainly won't be the last. Because whether we admit it or not, men grow up attaching silent weight to the size of certain body parts. It's not vanity, it's conditioning. Somewhere along the line, size became a symbol of masculinity, of strength, of being enough. And because testicles sit right at the core of what we biologically and symbolically associate with being male, it's easy to assume that bigger must mean better. But does it? And if it doesn't, then what does it actually mean? Most of us don't grow up with the real information. We get whispers, jokes, vague answers, or myths masquerading as truth. What we rarely get is clarity, and clarity matters, especially when it comes to your body, how it functions, how it signals, and what it's trying to tell you. This conversation isn't about ego, it's about insight, because underneath the surface of size is something far more complex. A deeply intelligent biological system doing specific high-stakes work every single day. Testicles aren't decorations. They are dual-purpose powerhouses. And to understand what their size means, you need to understand what they're actually built to do. Picture a high-functioning factory. Now imagine it running two completely different product lines inside the same building. One side is dedicated to producing sperm, the foundation of fertility. The other is responsible for manufacturing testosterone, the hormone that shapes everything from sex drive and muscle mass to your mood and energy levels. Two completely different processes. Two entirely different teams of workers. Same building, that's your testicles. On one side, you have sperm production spermatogenesis, a complex microscopic assembly line of cells forming the foundation of human reproduction. On the other side, you have hormone production, specifically testosterone, driven by a different set of cells entirely, the Leydig cells. Here's where the misunderstanding begins. When you see a large testicle, the immediate thought might be more testosterone. But that assumption is rooted in visual logic, not biological reality. Because the truth is, nearly 95% of the physical volume of your testicles is taken up by the machinery responsible for sperm production. Think of that as the bulk of the factory floor rows and rows of tightly coiled tubes known as seminiferous tubules. These are the workstations where sperm are created, matured, and stored. The actual workers in this department? Germ cells, the raw material of life. That means size, when we're talking testicles, is mostly about how much room is available for sperm production. The larger the factory, the more production lines it can run, and the more sperm it's capable of producing. That's not just an idea, it's a medically established relationship. In reproductive medicine, when doctors evaluate a man's fertility, one of the first physical clues they examine is testicular size. Why? Because a smaller testicle often means there's less internal machinery, less seminiferous tubules, less sperm output. There's even a name for this phenomenon when it becomes concerning: testicular atrophy. That's when the testicles shrink, either over time or due to specific conditions, and the production capacity drops. One common example is a condition called varicocele, a cluster of varicose veins in the scrotum that raises internal temperature and stresses the sperm-producing cells. Over time, this leads to damage, shrinkage, and impaired fertility. It's a clear, measurable link between size and reproductive function. And it's one of the first things a urologist will consider when helping couples facing infertility. So yes, when it comes to fertility, size actually does matter. Not in the way pop culture has told you, but in a direct biological way. More space, more sperm. Less space, less sperm. It's not about ego, it's about output. And in that specific context, size is a physical clue, sometimes the first sign that something may need to be examined more closely. But here's where the conversation takes a sharp turn. Because while sperm production takes up the bulk of the testicle, testosterone, the thing many assume is directly tied to size, is produced by a very different team operating in a much smaller space. The Leydig cells, responsible for making testosterone, live in the tiny spaces between the sperm-producing tubules. They don't take up much room. In fact, they only account for about 5% of the entire testicle's volume. That means a large testicle could be packed with sperm production equipment and still have only a small number of testosterone-producing cells. Conversely, a smaller testicle could contain highly efficient Leydig cells firing at full capacity. So when it comes to testosterone, testicle size becomes nearly meaningless. Even more importantly, the efficiency of these Leydig cells isn't even primarily determined by size. It's regulated by hormonal signals sent from your brain, specifically from the hypothalamus and pituitary gland. They orchestrate the hormone cascade that tells your Leydig cells how much testosterone to produce. It's not about space, it's about function. So if you're walking around wondering whether your energy, mood, or libido is low because your testicles look a certain way, you're asking the wrong question. The real indicators of low testosterone aren't visual. They're experiential. Fatigue that doesn't go away, low motivation, a drop in sex drive, difficulty building or maintaining muscle, subtle mood changes like irritability or even depression. These are the signs, and they require a different kind of evaluation, usually a blood test, not a measuring tape. This misunderstanding leads many men down the wrong path. They fixate on size, on what they see in the mirror, on what they think they're supposed to be. But biology isn't interested in appearance. It's interested in function. You could have small testicles and perfectly healthy hormone levels. You could have large ones and low testosterone. There is no reliable visual cue for your hormone health. And chasing that illusion only fuels insecurity instead of clarity. Still, let's be honest. For many men, the deeper concern isn't just fertility or hormones, it's performance. It's the quiet, often unspoken fear of not being able to show up when it matters most. Erection strength, sexual stamina, that sense of presence and power that, for better or worse, many tie to their sense of masculinity. And when performance slips, even temporarily, the mind goes searching for explanations. Size is an easy scapegoat. Maybe this is why, you tell yourself. But performance issues almost never come down to testicle size. In fact, the real causes are often more complex and more fixable.
The good news is there are solutions, natural, science-backed options that don't require pills, pumps, or extreme interventions. Sometimes it comes down to blood flow, sometimes hormones. Sometimes it's stress, lifestyle, diet, or inflammation. But whatever the root cause is, it's not written in your testicle size. The body speaks in function, not form. And listening to it, really listening, requires you to step beyond outdated beliefs and into a more grounded relationship with your own biology. So let's bring all of this together. What does your testicle size actually say about you? Biologically, it can be a meaningful indicator of sperm production. If fertility is your concern, and you notice your testicles are smaller than average, or seem to have shrunk over time, it's a valid observation. One worth mentioning to your doctor. It may lead to a semen analysis or further testing to determine if something deeper is going on. That's not weakness, that's wisdom. But if your concern is testosterone or sexual vitality, size won't give you the answers you're looking for. You have to shift focus, pay attention to your symptoms, your energy, your mood, your strength, your drive. That's where the real clues live. And if something feels off, don't waste time with mirrors and measurements. Go straight to the source. Talk to a professional. Get tested. Get real answers. Because here's the truth. Your testicles tell a story. But it's not about worth. It's not about manliness. It's about two functions, fertility and hormone production, each with its own rules, signals, and systems. Understanding those systems gives you power. Power not rooted in size or shape, but in knowledge. And that knowledge replaces shame with confidence, guesswork with clarity.
So if you've been quietly wondering what it all means, now you know. Not everything, perhaps, but enough to stop chasing myths, enough to take ownership of your health, and enough to ask better questions going forward. That's not just a physical upgrade, that's a psychological one, and it starts with seeing your body not as a measure of your worth, but as a messenger of your well-being. If this message brought you clarity, insight, or just a sense of relief, consider taking the next step, whether that's a deeper dive into health, a doctor's appointment, or simply subscribing to content that respects your intelligence and your biology. Don't stay stuck in silence. Curiosity led you here. Let action take you further.